had a big week and have a big day ahead. Today, we're going to talk about vision, the power of vision. And it really doesn't matter whether you're just starting out, like the little one, or my little ones, or Cole, or if we're a little further and deeper into our lives, we need vision. The Bible tells us that we need vision. Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. If we don't have a vision, we end up drifting, wasting time. That's right. We got President Trump with us this morning, everybody. John invited him. Talk about vision. It's fine. So I want to ask you guys a simple question, and I want you to please think about this throughout. And this is a short message, but while I'm bringing it to you this morning, I want you to think about: do you have a vision for your future? Do you have a God-given vision, a clear picture of where God is leading you in your life? Whether you have 80 years remaining, whether you have 8 years remaining, what is your vision for the remainder of your life? Have you ever driven somewhere and suddenly realized, and this happens to me all the time, have you ever driven somewhere and gotten to where you are and you don't have any recollection of driving from point A to point B? It's like you just got there and the in-between you don't even remember. You know, unfortunately, that's kind of how our life is sometimes. It just kind of is happening. We're just kind of moving through it without any kind of purpose in our life. But vision can change it all. It gives us clarity. It gives us purpose. It gives us motivation. And I want to tell you where the idea for this message came from. So I just took a quick trip up to Aspen, Colorado, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment on Friday, and then got back yesterday afternoon. And on the plane ride coming back, I had been praying about what I would share today, and just nothing had really come to me until I read this article. Okay, and I want to read this to you. It's The Moment I Saw My Future and Why Most People Never Do, and it's by this rock singer. Okay, his name is Christian Flores, and he said, I was standing in a packed stadium, the roar of the crowd nearly deafening. Tens of thousands of people were chanting the lyrics to a song I had scribbled down on scrap paper just months earlier. It was surreal. Just a few years earlier, I was writing music in a tiny apartment, never imagining that one day I'd be leading a movement, let alone on this scale. Years later, while working on a joint project with music legend George Duke in his Hollywood Hills studio, I had to ask him a question. The man had worked with icons, Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones, Miles Davis. The question was, what do the most successful artists, what do these kind of mega stars have in common? His answer wasn't what I expected, but it applies to anyone determined to build a new future. He didn't say talent, he didn't say hard work, he didn't even say luck. They could see themselves succeeding, is what he told me. They believed that they were going to be stars. Okay, that was the difference. They believed that they had this clear vision. That insight rang true. The ones who truly break through, whether in music, business, or leadership, aren't just gifted, they have an internal clarity. They have a certainty that they belong at the highest level. Most people never develop this clarity. Even those who start with it often lose it along the way, buried under the weight of setbacks, shifting priorities, and the sheer speed of life. But the ones who sustain it, the ones who stay the course, build momentum, and create real impact, tend to focus on vision, and nothing deters them from it. Okay? Just think about that for a moment as we dig into this message. And I know you may not want to be a rock star. That may not be your goal. I know John does, but most of the rest of you I know probably don't. But we all have goals. We all have desires. We all want to make an impact in this world. But unfortunately, the busyness of life, the setbacks that we have occurred along the way can often block that vision. And we just end up living day by day, surviving, one day at a time. Throughout history and the Bible, the most influential leaders and movements were driven by a compelling vision. Vision gives people a reason to press forward even when challenges arise. And let me give you just a few examples of these. The vision of the founding fathers. Okay, consider the founding of the United States. The men who wrote the Declaration of Independence had a vision of a nation built on liberty, justice, and self-governance. They risked everything because they believed in a future that had not yet been realized. This had never been seen before. Their vision was not without hardship. Many lost their wealth, their families, and even their lives, but they held firm to their vision. They laid the foundation for a country that would change the world. Now, sometimes we get a little off track from this initial vision, but this great experiment has literally changed the entire world. The vision of John F. Kennedy. Another remarkable example of vision is President John F. Kennedy. In 1961, President Kennedy stood before Congress and boldly declared a vision that many thought was crazy, frankly, impossible. He said, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth." At that time, America was way behind in the space race. The technology to land a man on the moon didn't even exist. There were skeptics, critics, and logistical challenges, yet his vision gave America a purpose and a mission. Though we didn't see it, his vision was fulfilled in 1969 when Neil Armstrong took the first steps on the moon. The world witnessed the power of a leader who dared to believe in the impossible. His vision united a nation, drove technological innovation, and changed the course of history. Vision is about seeing beyond the present and believing in what could be. Kennedy understood that, and so must we. So again, as I go through these, think about, what is my vision, okay? What does God have in store for me in my life here on this earth? The vision of Martin Luther King Jr. Fast forward to the Civil Rights Movement, and we see another powerful example in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech. It was not just a call for racial equality, it was a vision for a future where people would be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. He faced threats, violence, and ultimately gave his life for this vision. But because he stayed true to it, laws were changed, hearts were transformed, and his legacy lives on. The vision of Walt Disney. Okay, those of you that like Disney World, did you know Walt Disney was once fired from a newspaper because they said he lacked creativity? Okay, literally. Imagine telling Walt Disney he wasn't creative. He went on to start his own animation company, but it failed. Then he created a cartoon character, not Mickey Mouse, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, but he lost the rights to Oswald as well. Then he invented Mickey Mouse, and people said a cartoon with sound would not work. That was just made no sense. Later, he had a vision for a place where families could have fun together, Disneyland, and our daughter Emery just went there last week, wasn't it? They just went there last week. Nobody would fund him for this crazy venture. At every stage, people told him no, but Walt stuck true to his vision. And when Disneyland finally opened, someone said, you know, it's a shame that Walt Disney isn't here to see this. But his brother Roy responded, oh, but he did see it, and that's why it is here, because he had the vision for it. So often you will see many of these results of the visions happen after the people have already passed away. Sometimes the work that we do toward a vision, maybe it's in our family, maybe it's in our church, maybe it's in our community, maybe we don't see it while we're here. It may happen after we are already in heaven. If you look, Abraham Lincoln had a crazy vision of a free country where there would be no slaves. Gandhi had a crazy vision. Mandela had a crazy vision. The great change occurs from vision. It always happens. If you can see it with faith, God can bring it to life, even if no one else believes in it yet. There's so many examples of this that where people didn't believe in what other people saw so clearly. Oprah Winfrey was deemed not fit for TV. She was fired. J.K. Rowling was on welfare before she wrote Harry Potter. Colonel Sanders had 1,000 turndowns for his chicken recipe. 1,000. He went to 1,000 people and nobody liked it until they finally did. And now they're everywhere. Thomas Edison had 10,000 tries before he perfected the light bulb. Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team his sophomore year. But they knew they had greatness. They knew they had a vision. Nobody was going to dissuade them from that. We see the same thing in the Bible. The Bible is full of men and women who followed a God-given vision even when it seemed impossible. Abraham is one of the great examples of someone who walked by faith with a vision from God. In Genesis 12, God told him, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation." At the time, Abraham was old, childless, and he had no idea where he was even going. Yet he obeyed God and walked forward in faith, and today, the nation of Israel and countless believers around the world trace our spiritual heritage back to his obedience. Moses was a man with a vision, not one he created, but one that God gave him. In Exodus 3, God appeared to Moses in a burning bush and gave him a clear mission. "So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." At first, Moses doubted himself. He questioned his ability and even tried to excuse himself from the calling. But God reminded him that vision is not about our strength, but about God's power working through us. Because of Moses' obedience, millions of Israelites were set free, and the course of history was changed. You know, I love the story of Moses because he had a stuttering problem. He couldn't communicate well. He did not see himself in that role, but God did. God saw something he and case church right now. God has a vision for you that if you would just embrace it, you would not believe what he can do through you. Nehemiah is an example we're going to go just a little bit deeper in today. It's remarkable. When Nehemiah heard that the walls of Jerusalem were broken down, he was burdened with a vision to rebuild them. Despite opposition, discouragement, and threats, he pressed forward, saying, "I am carrying on a great project, and I cannot come down," in Nehemiah 6:3. His vision was not just about restoring these walls, but about restoring faith and identity to God's people. In just 52 days, what seemed impossible was accomplished. In Nehemiah 1, I'm going to read to you from there. You don't need to turn. They're just a few verses. "In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile and also about Jerusalem." So he's just basically saying, hey, how are things going back home? You know, what's the scoop back home? "They said to me, 'Those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire.' When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Then I said, 'Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly toward you. We have not obeyed the commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses. Remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me," and this is a hard verse for our country, "but if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name." And Nehemiah took that prayer and took that vision and pulled off one of the craziest construction projects in the history of mankind. 52 days, building walls, people are battling them. They got a sword in one hand, fixing stuff with the other, whatever, putting on mortar or putting on bricks or whatever. I mean, it's unbelievable. So here's what I want you to think about with Nehemiah for just a second. Number one, Nehemiah was not a king. He was not a prophet. He was a cupbearer to the king, okay? He was entry level. I mean, now he was with the king, so no doubt he was in good company, but he was not running the show. But when he heard that Jerusalem walls were broken down, he felt a deep burden. That burden became a vision, and here's how he turned his vision into action. These are some steps for you and for me. Number one, he prayed first. Okay, Nehemiah 1:4, he said, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned, and I fasted, and I prayed before the God of heaven. He went to God first to confirm his vision. Before he took action, he sought God's direction. Number two, he made a plan. He asked the king for permission, for resources, and for protection. Vision without a plan is just a dream, and Nehemiah had both. Number three, he faced opposition, but he kept going. And we see this over and over. If you think about those examples that I shared at the beginning, every one of those individuals faced opposition. Okay, never did somebody just go, oh, that's a great idea. Let's go to the moon. You know, let's not have slaves anymore. Let's treat everybody the same. Oh, that's not how it happened. The way it happened is there was fighting and gnashing of teeth and everybody trying to hold on to their power and, you know, and to what got them to where they were. And they had to battle through, and so did Nehemiah. When Nehemiah started rebuilding, everybody made fun of him. I mean, everybody made fun of him. But he kept working and finished in just 52 days. You know, another amazing, this just hit me when I was in Sunday school with Bill this morning. Another amazing example of vision is Jesus Christ. So think about what gets you through knowing that you are going to be brutally crucified. What in the world? How in the world do you get through that? Well, you get through it because you know that you are going to ascend to heaven and you are going to sit at the right hand of your Father forever and ever. And it may be that for some of us in here, the vision that we need is that vision and hope of the fact that we will spend eternity in heaven. What you are going through here on this earth may be very, very difficult. It probably is. It's a fallen world. You know, this is not our home. This is not where we're meant to be. It's going to be hard for all of us, but we have the same thing that got Jesus through that brutality that he had to deal with, that excruciating crucifixion, can get us through this time as well. So what we know about vision is that these examples give us several key truths about vision. Number one, vision comes from God. A true vision is not just a personal ambition. If you feel that the Lord is placing something on your heart, and it is not just your ego, it's not just something that you're trying to do for you, I would submit to you that it is from the Lord, and you need to pray into that. If there's something that you're setting here today, and I know there is, because I know as I begin to pray through this, I know 100% that in this church today, somebody, as I give this message, something is right here. You're like, man, there is something that I know I've been called to. I know I've been called to, and I've been scared to do it. I've been scared to take the step, and I know that this message is to give you the permission to step forward. I know it. It was so clear to me. It was clear to me this morning as I was praying through it that vision comes from God. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope." He wants to give you that vision. We have to seek God's guidance for our lives and trust that He has a purpose beyond what we can see. Number two, vision not only comes from God, it requires faith and it requires courage. Every one of those examples that I mentioned, whether it was Abraham leaving his homeland, whether it was Moses confronting Pharaoh, whether it was JFK committing to the moon landing, all of those, Martin Luther King endangering his life, every one of these required that person to step beyond fear and into faith. Fear is what kills vision. It does it over and over times. We had the vision of what we thought we could create with the bank. It was terrifying. We had the vision that was given to me for the daily devotional. It was terrifying. Every big vision that I have ever been given has required this push through because it would always be much easier to just stop. But if you stop, no impact occurs. Nothing has changed. Nobody's life has changed. And you miss out on the opportunity that God has given us. Number three, vision always faces opposition. Now, it may not be worldwide opposition, like some of these things that we are talking about here. It may be opposition of a doubter within your family. It may be your brothers and sisters who, just like Jesus, just like the folks in Jesus' village, thought, he can't possibly be this healer. He can't possibly be the Savior. This is the son of Mary and Joseph. They were just down the street. He was just down the street kicking the can around or doing whatever they did back then for fun. That's what people are going to think of you too. And you cannot allow the opposition. Every visionary faces criticism, obstacles, and doubt. I'm telling you, I know about this one. Nehemiah had enemies trying to stop his work. Moses had Pharaoh resisting him. Kennedy had skeptics questioning his space ambitions. If you pursue a vision, expect opposition, but do not let it stop you. Number four, vision inspires others. A God-given vision is never for just for one person. It spreads and it brings hope, it brings purpose, it brings direction to others. Look at Jesus. His vision of the kingdom of God has shaped the course of human history. His disciples caught the vision. Now, let's talk about how do we find and follow our vision, and we're going to close with this today. Number one, seek God in prayer and His Word. Ask God for direction. Okay, number one. If you're sitting there today and going, I don't know. I don't know what my vision is. I don't know what my future is going to be. Ask God. He will tell you. Number two, pay attention to what burdens your heart. Your calling is often connected to your passion. If there's something out there, it's like Paula with Little Black Dress. That was hard. Man, and all the ladies that stepped in and helped with that. A little bitty church pulling off those type of events, but it was a burden. It was something that the Lord had placed on her heart that she did not let go of. Number three, surround yourself with the right people. Find people who encourage you and challenge you, not people that want to drag you down. It's interesting. One of my friends is from Australia, and he said that I can't remember what he called it. It's something about a flower. That in Australia, if you raise up, if you're like the flower that raises up, everybody wants to cut you down. It's like their culture. It's like their society. We don't want to be that. We want to be people that build others up. And four, take action even when it's hard, because faith requires movement. You have to actually do something for a vision to occur. When we were in Aspen, my largest client at the bank was telling me there were all these. It's amazing, and I'm sure John sees this as well. It's amazing how the Lord will bring, when you're supposed to bring a message, it's like it always hits me from like 5 different angles. So we're sitting there visiting at lunch on Friday, and my client was telling me how he had moved to the U.S. from Pakistan, and he had nothing. And he started out with this little gas station. Somebody agreed to sell him this little gas station, and it was a colossal failure. And he said it was so odd because he said, here he is, he's broke, he's $30,000 in debt. He said $30,000 might as well have been 30 billion at that time. It was all the money in the world. But he said it was so funny because he always had this vision of himself as a successful and generous business person. He said, I could just see it. He said, from the time I was little, I could just see what I was supposed to be. And he said that vision just kept moving him forward. He got into cell phones. Now he owns half of North Texas and is a very successful and generous, but he's donated to us here. He's a very successful and generous business person. I met a gentleman at dinner on Friday. Again, the theme this week was vision. It just kept hitting me everywhere I would go. This guy's name is John Sarpa. And John Sarpa, back in 1984, got involved in a real estate development in Aspen. And it was funny, he said he was actually battling with President Trump over the land, that they both wanted this 120 acres of land in the middle of Aspen, and he was like, he's brutal, man, you don't want to mess with that guy. And so it was so funny. So he, in 1984, Aspen was way down, struggling. And he said he and a couple of other individuals had this vision of a place that would not just be a mountain ski town. It would be very cultured. It would be a place where they would bring in think tanks and the best in music and art. And it would become much more than just a place to come in and go skiing. Today, the average home price for a 4-bedroom home in Aspen, let's just guess. Somebody guess. What do you think? Obviously, it's more than Oklahoma. Just guess. What do you think a 3 million? All right, I got a 3 million. Anybody else? 2 million. How about, he's got 8 million. How about $18 million? $5,000 to $6,000 a foot is what it takes to buy a home in this place, because there are 100 billionaires living in a town of 6,000 people total. It's wild, but it all came from, and that brings its own problems. Nobody can afford to live there. Where does the labor, where do they stay? They have to live an hour away. I mean, it's got its own challenge. We don't want to have that here. But his vision, but it all came from vision. It all started with vision of what they wanted this city to be. It's amazing. So what we want to do is pray for clarity. James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God. Number 2, write our vision down. Habakkuk 2:2 says, write the vision, make it plain. Start taking small steps. Joseph had to serve in prison before he ruled in the palace. Nehemiah had to ask the king before he rebuilt the walls. Number 4, surround yourself with people of vision. Joseph's brothers mocked him. Nehemiah's enemies mocked him. Find people who encourage your vision, not tear it down. Trust God's timing. Vision takes time. Many times a vision is given that takes years, and as we have seen, sometimes lifetimes to come to fruition. Disney wasn't built overnight. His dream wasn't. Joseph's dream took years to come true. So did Moses. So what vision has God placed in your heart? Is it to start a business? Is it to write a book? Is it to restore a broken relationship? Is it to create a legacy for your family? Is it to go deeper in your faith? What is it? I would ask you to pray. As I'm going to close here in prayer, and then I'll turn it over to John and Paula for our prayer after. But I just want you to pray with me right now for your vision. We all have one. The Lord has a purpose for every life here. The question is, will we listen and will we take action? That is the question. So please bow with me this morning.